Shlamamkhun. This is the third lesson that I'm doing going through Arayathinal's Aramaic Grammar. Please subscribe, turn on notifications. That really helps be able to encourage the channel along. And in this lesson, we're going to be going through lesson 6 of Arayathinal's Grammar, which you can find access to both in PDF and to purchase. I recommend the purchase or to print out as PDFs. Starting on page 69 of the written text. And as usual, I'm going to be going through his own, the content of the grammar in my own way, and then his review sentences, so you can sit back and go through it. Please also check out the other videos I have on the Aramaic language, on the Syriac or Assyrian language, so that you can develop your skills in a multifaceted approach. So the noun in Syriac has a common form, a kind of unremarkable in the sense of it's the form we assume, or dictionary form in the sense that it's the way you'd look it up in a dictionary. And that one usually ends with skapa elep. So if we look at the word king, this is the root that has to do with ruling. It's also what it would look like just to have the idea of a king, an idea that is found in something else. But when it is a king or the king, once it's a substance, once it's, the king of Bashan, if it's, do you have a king? In the sense of, we're actually speaking of not kingliness, but the king. We always have the ending of, not that one, skapa alab, so it'd be melka, so that it ends with that. And using transliteration, it would look like this, melka. It's this last bit that makes it into a substantive form, into what most modern Syriac grammars call the emphatic state, or the noun in its emphatic state and its emphatic condition. I believe Arayathinal calls it in the definite state. Muraukoa also calls it emphatic or determinate. You don't need to know all those words. Emphatic is probably by far the most common used today. Absolute and construct, it's a short form, and it's used in the construct to say something like, for instance, we have the word house, which is beit in its construct or in its absolute form, but we usually say it as beita, a house. But if you want to say like beit yulpana, the house of learning, you notice that ta isn't done there. Why? Because the housiness of it is found in the teaching. It's a school, it's a house of learning, it's a house of something. The house is not in and of itself a house, but if it's saying, this is my house, you would say, beita, this is my house, right? It exists in itself. Let me make it simple instead of going through all the Aristotelian logic behind the Syriac. In English, it's when we say a or the thing, right? So if I say, for instance, house of learning, what kind of house is it of learning? This is like a title. The house is not an actual house. It's in the sense of coming from what this whole thing is as a thing. So you say a house of learning, not a house of the learning or the house of a learning or something like that, right? So make it simple. It's when we say a or the, then the masculine is going to end with iskapa alep. Now I've set up a chart so we can go through this. If any of that confuses you, you can skip it. If it helped you, cool. It's really there because it shows up in all the grammar books. And so I want to make sure that also in teaching this, I make it easy for you when you're going through a grammar book. So, melka, that is the masculine singular, which is the base form, the root form, melka, of a noun. And you notice that it's in, all of these are in the a or the form in the emphatic state. And if you want to make it feminine, you have to add a ta ending. Ta marks feminines. Almost always when you see the ta ending, it's going to be feminine. And the a means a or the king. The ta ending means a or the she version of something. Now going back to melka, the king. How would you say the kings? You add a long zlam, a long e to it. Malike. Oh, let's fix what I just did there. Malike. If you notice over here, it's malike. And you see those two dots right up there. Those two dots called siame. They denote all plurals. Those right there. Now I don't have those here because I have my full vowels. Now if I was writing Syriac without vowels, so that I'm writing like this, you don't know if that's king or kings unless you have siame. Now I know that's kings, melke. If I go, so now let's do the plural of the feminine. So going back to melka, from melka we have to add a ta, ta ending. So right there you see the ta ending, ta, malk, ta, and it deletes the, you see that two dots up here, that a, it gets deleted and replaced with a ta. So it's malkta. Now if you want to make it plural, you have to add between that ta and the root with the cap a long a or a skapa. Malikata. Malikatha. So if you were to see a word that looks like this, it could be malikta. Or if it has this, it's malikata. Arayathinal also adds a little bit to what we learned last week. So last week we learned just the singular, third person masculine, the he form, he wrote, kthau, and the she wrote, kithbath. For a quick review of that, remember that we have the root, let me go back here. We have the root of kaf, tau, ptacha, beth, kthau. So you basically have a ptacha, or a short vowel on the middle letter or after the middle letter. And to make it she wrote, you have to add to it oth. Right? And when those two are added to each other, you would get tabath, which doubles the beth. Why? Because short vowels need a closing letter, or else they soften it. So that's why this beth is softened into ktau. It's not ktab, because there's a ptacha before it, unless it gets divided by being shared, which would happen here. But that would change the root into being ktbb instead of ktb, which we don't want to do. So we delete this vowel. I'm sorry, we can't delete that vowel. That vowel has to do with it being a female that did it in the past. So we have to delete this vowel. Push it back, so it becomes the shortest of vowels. Whoop. Kith, right? See that vowel just softened, that tau? Kith, bath, and hardened that beth. Kith, bath. What you really need to memorize is that ending means that she did it. Those two dots are always done in the East Syriac. The West Syriac do not always do those, so keep that in mind. So we can see it in West Syriac, right? Easy way to remember it is kthau, he wrote, kith, bath, she wrote. Now what if you want to say they wrote, like a group of men? You take your root, kthau, and you have to add to it un. Is that going to create any problems? Any vowels that need to be deleted? Nope. The un in Arayathinal wonderfully makes a note that un does not count in terms of splitting up vowels. It is allowed to just be there as an un. So kthawun. Rarely you'll see kthawun. Usually you'll see this form of it, which is pronounced just like he wrote kthaw. But when we see that silent waw at the end, we know that it's third person plural. They wrote kthaw. So you can think of it as the third person plural is basically a plus un, or more likely a plus silent o, silent waw. And feminine, again, we start with our root kthaw, and we're going to add to it the in, so we don't anymore put the dot to soften it, because it's going to be held by that long zlama, and it's in. And again, these don't affect the vowel reduplication. It's allowed to just be a kthawen. Notice we don't say ktaben, kthawen. Rarely, again, you'll see kthawen, the ending where it's like this for they did something. More often, you'll just see it look just like the third masculine, kthaw. A lot of Western writers will add to it a silent yud to say that it's in the sense of they did it, with a siyame or the double big dots on top. You won't see that though with Eastern writers. And I'm even going to check my book to make sure I did that all correct. Yes. So to show that this is a Western thing, let's go Western on it. Tawai, right? That's a marker for they as a group of females did it. And that's going to be all the grammar for this lesson. He does give us a few sentences. Why not take a crack at them? And the reason he's giving them is to explain a little bit of like syntax. So ati, I have to make that plural. The rich people, atire, rechem, they loved. Oh, notice that wow, we could also, this would be correct, but this is how the text has it. With the silent wow, which you'd usually see, it means they loved. Who loved? Atira, the rich people. Yeah, nutha. So it's like covetousness. Ya nutha. U Meskene da galuta. Now if you notice, so miskene is like a humble person or a poor person. Da galuta is lying. You cannot say atire rechem ya'nuta or miskine rechem da galuta. When you have one verb and it's being used by two different predicates. So you have atire as a predicate, the rich people, and the miskine, which are the poor people. Now notice that this verb, atire rechem, it's used with a different predicate. So the subjects are different. One is atire rechem ya'nuta, the other one's miskine rechem dagaluta, but you cannot repeat rechem right here. It just doesn't fit Syriac style. Verbs don't double that way. You would always say atire rechem ya'nuta miskine dagaluta. Something about the parallelism there. We just always do that. And Arayathinal nicely points that out. And the other one is that, as he writes on page 71, when there's more than one singular noun of the same gender and person, So it's going to have the same form of the verb. The predicate may be put in the plural to agree with them, or in singular to agree with the nearest. So let's look at that. He's got two different examples. One is kad, iwarath, as she entered, iwarath, shabtha, Maryam, Magdaleta, ومريم ليعقوب وشالوم زوان هرومي, so that's like spices, Nityan, that they would be coming, Nim Shchane, that they would anoint him. That probably should have a siyama on it. Now what we're interested in is that as Saturday, Sheptha, so it's feminine, that TA ending, right? It has a skap on it. Awurath, because Saturday is feminine, she crossed, as Saturday crossed over as it passed. Maria Magdaleta, Mary Magdalene. Maryam Diapo, Mary of Jacob, mother of James. Shalom, Salome. Zwan, they bought. Hirom and Nitilan, that they would come and anoint him. And then he gives another sentence. Echad, it means he grabbed. Who grabbed? We're going to find that out. Tahra, wonder grabbed, right? So it's Tahra, that grabbed. Udumara. Tahra, Udumara. So Tahra is like wonder. Dumara is amazement. He grabbed. See, they're using it, saying Tahra echad and Dumara echad. El kulhun, to all of them who? Khazaye. So to all those who beheld, all the watchers, all the spectators. So to all the spectators, kulhun khazaye. But what's important is that Tahra, which is wonder, and Dumara are both singular masculines, and they both get echad. But another option is Mary and Salome, all of them get they bought. So this would be like English, right? We'd say Mary and Salome, they bought. But here you're saying wonder and amazement, it ceased. So that's one with some options. Now let's go look at the questions in the chapter. So here's our chapter that we're going through. You can look through it on your own. And let me make it bigger. So vocabulary, akha, brother, akhu, his brother, awahe, ilpa, evangelion, ihwe, I will be, echad, like he grabbed, ithutha, so existence as the existing one, describing God. Beisha, Bisha, evil. So Beisha and Bisha, they can look the same, but one has an AY after the B, the other one has an I. So this one just has Khwasa, the other one has an actual Skapayud. Burikta, Brach, Brak, he bent. Baroya, بريثة. Barnasha, Barnasha. So you notice that this historical alep is here, and here it isn't. You'll see both. Bnei Nasha. Again, the historic alep on Nasha can be swallowed up, especially when creating a one-word form. This is keeping two. So the word son, if you take off this Nasha, you would just go bra. You put a skap at the end. It would be the emphatic form. Here you're seeing that shortened form, that construct form. Bar Nasha, the son of man. Sonship exists there. It's not the son of the man. It's Bar Nasha, man. Nei Nasha. Ginsa, so a kind, also used of genus, a race. Galla, a wave. Dubara. Duar is to lead. So dubara is that which leads you, your conduct. Daggaluta. Dgal means he lied. Daggalutha. That utha int, it's always feminine. It's always abstract. Usually when we turn something abstract, it takes a feminine sense. And utha is a very common ending. It's always utha. Daggalutha. So the idea of lying, falsehood. Dikhlath alaha. Dikhil means he feared. He was fearful. Dikhlat alaha means to have the sense of awe or dread or wondrous fear before God. Dumara, like one of the same sayings of our Lord, one of the names of our Lord. Dumara, wonder. Demech, he slept. How would we say she slept? Dimkath, she slept. Hinyocha, a charioteer. Hinyocha. Zizana, so like a wheat, like the ones that have to be plucked out from among the wheat in the gospel. Zizana. Zmar, he sung. Zmar, she sung. Zimrath, skap. So the Z sound, and this is in Gleta's grammar in chapter 1, when it comes before a k or a k sound, it often takes a s sound, like a saw this. So we say skap, but it's written zkap. We just never say zkap, because listen to me try to say it. Zkap. We say skap. It just has to do with the physical articulation of the consonants. So skap, he rose. He was, and I guess if she rose, it'd be sikpath. Zra, he sowed. She sowed. Zra'ath. Choreu, Horeb. Chazaya. So Chaza, he saw. Chazaya is one who is looking. How many zins in Chazaya? Two, of course. Chaz and Zaya. Chazaya. We don't say Chazaya, we say Chazaya. Khanpa or Hanpa, meaning a pagan. Tohma, the tribe, that old ancient family, the Tohma. Tamar, he hid, or he like dug himself in. Tamar, modern, Tamar will sound like that. Tamar, he hid. I guess if she hid, it would be Tamrath. Yochanan, Ya'anotha, right? So avarice, love of money, Ya'anotha. Yathma, the orphan. Kpar, so he renounced, usually in the sense of he renounced God. He fell into abject renunciation of God, or let's say she renounced herself. He renounced himself in a good sense of the word. Kpar, she renounced herself. Kiproth, ked, while. La. Lampeda, so that's a long E-Y. Lampeda. Notice that here it takes the different vowel that has to do with just That's a minor difference between the styles. Let me make sure I've got enough of this on screen. Mahshula. So the waves of the ocean that strike you. Mahshul al-yamma. Malaha. So the khet and the kaf, they used to be pronounced, and they still are in Al-Qush dialect, different ways. In my dialect, a lot of Assyrians, we pronounce it both like khet and khab, but khet could be het. So malaha, the pilot, not the malacha, which is the angel with the khet. Miskena. Mapnyaya. Pna, he respond. Mapnyaya, a respondent, one who's answering. Ma sarta. Ma sarta. So ma sarta is the thing that squeezes. Notice the ta ending, ta. Msadta. So sad dalat has to do with fishing and hunting. Msadta is that by which you fish. Msadta. So you notice it's an instrument of version of ta. Ma'artha. Ma'artha, the cave, like St. Ephraim has the famous book, The Cave of Treasures, Ma'artha Ghazze. Marhate. Marhate. So that would be like your couch and the stuff in your cupboard, your marhate. Nahira. So anything that's bright. They could be the bright specks in the sky, the nahira, araqi'a. It could be the nahirat that you click on and off at night in your room. Nihwe, he will be. Like in the Lord's Prayer, Nihwe sawyanach. Your will be. Nihwe sawyanach. Nam, he slept. Nam. Nsikha. So anything that is made by pouring like a metal into a mold is nsikha. Sahda, a witness. Sahduta would be the act of giving witness, martyrdom. Sadutha. Sahda is the witness, it's masculine. Zghola, the bunch of grapes. Zghola. Zghid, he worshipped, he adored. Sigta, worship, right? The feminine form of zghid is sigta. Why? It's that which comes from worshipping, the act of worship, the cult, the religion. Seipa, the sword. Wad, he made, so she would. Awdath. Awada is a work. Ighla, so the young of the cow. Ighla, the calf. Al, he entered, also means on. Al, right? So two different things. There's the verb is al. Na'ul, he will go in. Amora, so an inhabitant. Amorana, daundita, I am an inhabitant of the city. Amora. So Amar has to do with living in a place. Amora means the man who is an inhabitant. Anida, the dead person. So sometimes at church, the deacon will ask to see if he should say the parts for someone who has, that it's a requiem liturgy. He'll say, do we have anide? Do we have the departed? Anide. Sar, right? Saw the resh. Interesting. We saw that root here in ma'asarta. So if you see saw the resh, that thing, ma'asarta, that squeezes. And asar means to press. You know, she pressed me. Asraf. Atira, a rich person. Plach, he worked. Pacha, so snare or trap. Pacha. It popped like the bubia, the pipe. Press, he spread it about. Sliwa, the cross. Samcha, the splendor. like samkhid awa, the splendor of the father that the son has. Qam, he stood, and it's letting you the plural is also qam with a waw. Qinyana, and modern Assyrian speakers will know this as a common word for a bull, but qinyana means anything that is your wealth. Think of it as come from the word qana, he earned, right? Qinyana, your wealth. Qtal, he killed. How would you say that in feminine? Qat, and then that off ending, qat loth. Qawra, he cried out. Muqwakhle, sounds like it, right? Qaysa, the wood. So we could make up a word here. Samkha, the qaysa, the sliwa, the splendor of the wood of the cross. Qishta, the bow. So we have the rainbow, we call it Qishta the Maran, the bow of our Lord. Radab, persecuted, he persecuted. The evil man persecuted me, Radab. Or the evil woman, Rad Path. Rakhim, he loved, she loved. Rikhmath. Rush'a, kind of sounds wicked. Rush'a, right? Rashi'a would be the wicked man. Rush'a, wickedness. Rakhsha. Rashi'a. Shiltha, a request. Shiltha. So you notice it's put into two discrete syllables. Shil and tha. Sha'a, a rock. Sha'a, as in a hard place. Shama'a, a hearer. Shama is to hear. Shama'a is to hear. Shkhew, it's like you laid on it. So we talk about the departed sometimes as the anide, as shahbe apra, those who lay upon the dirt. Shkhew, he lay down, he slept. Shmot, shmot. So you think of it, if you know modern Assyrian, shmotle, he broke, but this is like, think of it like break open your sword. Shmot, seipe, he pulled out a sword. Shmot, seipe. Shawharana, he is one who does pride, he's a boaster. Shema, he heard. Did she hear? Shem'ath, Shem'ath, did she hear? Shwak, he forgave, or he just left it. He left his homework at home. Shwak, she left her homework at home. Shabqath, tahra, amazement. Tahra. In the Western, it's tahra, tahra. So that vowel is different. Let's go through the exercises. Shu'a, the rocks burst. Henun, these, shkhew, they rested al sawrach, on your hope, on the hope which is from on thy hope, sawrach. 3. Waq'aha, he cried out, and he cried out. Waq'a, qale, in his voice. Qala, qala would be voice. We end that long A, that's qapa, and then we can attach the A from last chapter. Qale, waq'ab qale, and he called out in his voice. Shu'a, and the shu'a, the rocks, qa, burst. Uqam, and they got up. Who got up? Anided, the dead. Ushukha, and praise. Zmar, they sung. Sahde, the martyrs. Kpar awahe, they renounced. The kparun. Awahe, by their fathers, but it doesn't say theirs, but I know it means theirs. Uakhe, and brothers. Wawginsa, and their kind, their Utohma, tribe. Umauta, and death. Let me make sure I'm getting this sentence in. Okay, so it's up to here. Sahdik parwawahe waakhe wawginsa utohma. The martyrs renounced their fathers and brothers and their kind and their tribe. Umaw tarhim, and they loved death. Muttal Isha, for the sake of Isha, Jesus. Abresha dasliwa, on the head of the cross. Resha, so the resha is the head, and then you cut off that skapa and you replace it with a zlaba he. Resha dasliwa, of the cross. Awad, they made. Who made? Hoidaye, Yodaye, if you want to pronounce it correctly, Yodaye, the Jews. Ma'asarta, a wine press. Wa'asar, and they pressed. Bah, who's the feminine? Ma'asarta. So they pressed in her, the ma'asarta, the sugola, the cluster of grapes, the burkata, of blessings. So burikta would be a singular, burkatha. Atire, the rich people, rachim ya'anutha miskene dhagaluta. We've gone through this one. The rich people loved avariceness, and the poor people lies. Sad, perhaps true. Shwak binyane, so they left shwak binyane, all their material possessions, umarhate, and their movable possessions. Hinnun brach, they knelt one pal and fell. It's like people falling to their knees and falling on their face. Wamsutta, pras naush. This is interesting. Wamsutta, sad, right, to fish, to hunt. Wamsutta, the fishing net. And the net, pras, they spread out. Naush, unto myself. Notice I don't pronounce the yud. Review chapter last. That youth is not pronounced. It means mine. L'armlatha, to the widows. Wal hamore, and to those who live. Qtal, they killed them. They killed. How do they know? Silent vaw there. Wal yathme, and to the orphans. Khraw, they are destroyed. It means like they devastated them. 11. Ardab, they persecuted al-miskine, to the miskine, to the poor. Wal weisha, so beisha is a poor person, but when I say wal, it then becomes a weisha. So miskin is the humble. Let's make this better. They persecuted miskina, the humble, wal weisha, and the poor. Who ban, he, so this is good for last chapter. Who, he, ban is with us, with nachnan and us. That's a very old way of saying chnan, us, and nachnan be, in him. So that's using those dual letters, the beth from those. Rachim rush'a, they loved rush'a, wickedness. Pelne hinyoch, the charioteers fell. Nam malache, the captain slept. Watwa il payhun, and their ships sunk. Notice the usage of the singular. Aha, but ilpa is feminine. Yes, it is in Syriac as in English. That's cool. Ukhad shma, and as they heard, arak, they fled. One pak, and they went out. Min qawra, from the tomb. So probably not with dirt on top of them. It probably is they hear something, they're in the tomb. Wa ukhad shma arak, one pak min qawra. Khempe, the pagans. Shwak, they left. Sigtad alaha, the worship of God. Dahra, wonder sees. Dumara khulhun khazaya, to all those spectators. Khazaya. Al, they entered. Was ghid, and they worshipped. Li, bam'artha, in the cave. Who, you, right? Who, we don't say who. That second head, think of it switching to y to make a nice word. Who you, he is. Samkhshuhe, the splendor of his glory. Usalmad ituthe, and the image of his existence. Ituthe. Inna ihwe, I will be. Inna ihwe. You don't need it, but the author put it. You could just say ihwe, but inna ihwele, I will be to him a father. Who, and he, nihweli laura. But we need it syntactically. I will be to him to father, and he will be to me to son. إن إهوالي العاوة وهو نهوالي لورا. So let's go to the answer sheet and use that as some more exercise. So that's 3B in the answer sheet. In the answer book, Shamo'a, the hearer, the slawatha of prayers, Wam Panyana, and the answerer, Shalatha of requests. So Shamo'a, the slawatha, Wam Panyana, Shalatha. Qaddish, the holy ones, the saints, Shparlach, were pleasing to you. To Shpar, so if you say, Adam Shpar, that means Adam made himself to be pleasant, to be beautiful. He was one who inhabited, did the action of giving unto the other beauty. Shparlach dubarehun. They pleased you in their good deeds, their good comportment. قديش شبرلق دوباريهم قديش شبرلق دوباريهم أخلمبيده, as lambs, nahire, that give light, and pakde went out, laurita, laurita, to the creation, shliche قديش, the holy apostles. أخلمبيده nahiren pak laurita, shliche قديش. Macharme, in his vineyard, plach, they worked. Hey, we could do this, shliche kadisha too, right? Bacharme plach, or bacharme plach, shliche kadisha. Warachem dechlat alaha, and they loved the fear of God. They loved to worship. We think of worship as that action of that connection with God as dechlat ala, the fear of God. Warachem dechlat ala, hey, shliche kadisha again, right? Warachem dechlat alaha, shliche kadisha. La awar, they did not cross al-pum, on my mouth. That means they didn't transgress my mouth. La awar al-pum, awade. So awad is to do. Awade, the doings, the actions. Dawneinasha. Man's ways did not cross my mouth. La awar al-pum, awade, dawneinasha. Oh, this is from the evening psalm. Marli pache, they buried unto me snares. The marli pache. 8. Say pashmat, they pulled out the sword. Notice that they pull out a sword, even though of course they're not all pulling out one sword, right? So that singular plural patterns, notice them. So the Rashia, the wicked ones, shmat, they pulled it out of its case. Not its case, their cases, their swords. But in Syriac we say one sword. Say pashmat Rashia. Wamtach qishta, and they drew mtach. So mtach is like, you can say this sometimes about bread dough. I was making bread with my daughter. Mtach. We use that to open it up. But for a bow, it's when you draw it with an arrow, so you shoot it. Right? Say pashmat Rashia wamtach qishta. Awad Igla Mkhuru. In Horeb they made a calf. Awad Igla Mkhuru was ghid. They worshipped Lansikha, to that molten thing. Tamarli, they buried me. Shawharane, the pride ones, the proud. Pached, the proud buried unto me snares. Tamarli Shawharane Pached. Atun bi, you are in me. Atun wenna bachun. Atun bitun. So you are in me, he's saying to them. Atun bi, atun, right? You are in me. It's the double atun. I probably would say that atun bitun. Anna bachun na. And I am with you. Notice the parallelism. You have the double innas and the double atuns. Y'all in me. Atun is y'all. Atun bitun. Anna bachunna. The Mechnasha, the man slept. Was Rabisha, and the evil one. It's not Bish, that would be evil of something. This is Bisha, or a evil, so it's not evil. The Mechnasha was Rabisha Zizanau. His many bad seeds. Skap, galle. So skap, something's going up. I'm not sure what. It's kind of, I have to attach something to a verb to figure it out. Galle, oh, the waves. So the waves went up. It's not the cross that's being put up, skipa, but this is the galle, the waves. Skap galle, washin machshule, and the waves became hard. The current became washin machshule. Washmal Yochanan, and they heard to John, Karo Zad Evangelion, the preacher of the evangelist, the Evangelion. Npal Henyoche, the Henyoche are the charioteers, that Npal, that fell. Wazred al Qisa, and they worshipped the Qisa, wooden things, the woods. Wal Khepe, and to the Kepe, the rocks. Wal-rakhsha, the ara'a, the crawling things upon the earth. Wal-qaysi, wal-khaypi, wal-rakhsha, the ara'a. Thank you very much. Please add in your comments anything I can do to help, and let me know any ways that these videos can be improved. God bless, and I think that gives us our 40-something minute lesson for today. God bless and goodbye.